my lovelies, and welcome to the Spirit Tarot and Healing Arts YouTube channel. If you are new, welcome back. If you are a returning viewer, I'm Rin, and today we are doing my hot takes on tarot gatekeeping and fake tarot readers. Now, the whole thing that spawned this, for me personally, was a video I saw by Ethany. I will link that below, and I saw that and I kind of wanted to talk about it, but then I also saw Lou Valacourt, the Rocker Witch, do a video on this topic as well, kind of in response to Ethany's, and I'll link that in the description box below as well so you can check out both of those videos. But in a nutshell, here's what's going on. This person posted a TikTok, and I have no clue who she is. We are not, well, Ethany, you can see excerpts from the TikTok in Ethany's video, but I am taking Lou Valacourt's approach to this. I am not going to mention that TikToker's name. I'm not going to link to their original video. I'm not going to put excerpts of their video in. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So this woman claims to be a tarot reader. I have no way to know or verify whether or not she is actually a tarot reader, but I do 100% believe that the video she created was just to be a troll, to be controversial, to use the love of controversy on TikTok to drive traffic to her TikToks. And this is not something we want to encourage, because she spreads a lot of misinformation and she does a great disservice to the spiritual community. So we do not want to boost her numbers, and that is why I am not going to link to her or put any excerpts from her TikTok into this video, because we don't want to encourage this kind of behavior, because I'm just going to say what it is. It is toxic. It is the toxic part of TarotTok. That is where she is. She is a shining example of toxicity on TikTok. As I said in the title of this video, and as I did my introduction, these are my hot takes, and I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to call a spade in this particular video. So while we don't want to drive traffic or encourage this TikToker's behavior, I do think that these are important things to talk about so that those who get readings or want to get readings or want to learn about tarot are better informed and better educated, so that they truly know what to look out for. Basically, the short version of this person's TikTok is that she lists a few ways that you can supposedly spot a fake tarot reader. Spoiler alert, I think she's completely full of it. Certain she's completely full of it. And I will, at the end of the video, we'll talk about how to actually spot fake tarot readers. So let's dive into her list of imaginary red flags that you should be watching for when getting tarot readings. Now, I understand that part of what she's doing is geared towards being negative of pick a card readings and general readings and people who are doing lives on TikTok. And I've kind of mentioned before that I do have my own reservations, qualms, issues with general readings and pick a card readings. It's just my own personal thing. I don't think they're bad overall. I just think that there are better and worse ways to do them, and I often find myself dissatisfied with them when I am the one doing them, because I never feel like I'm getting specific enough, and I always worry that I'm not getting the right information to the right viewer. And that's my own personal thing, my own personal struggle, if you will. So that's a separate issue entirely, and I do get that what she's trying to do is discredit a bunch of tarot readers who do that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, there are some really crappy supposed tarot readers who do this kind of thing But for the most part, whether the readings resonate with you as an individual or not, these are real readers doing real readings. It's just the nature of those types of readings makes it difficult for them to be a hit with everyone who's watching them. But that aside, let's dive into her imaginary red flags. So her first imaginary red flag is if you don't see your reader cleanse the deck between every single reading. I'm going to be honest with you, of the people that I know who read, very few of them, if any, do a full out cleansing ritual of their deck between every reading. Especially if you are a professional reader, time just does not allow for that. And there's a few reasons why. One is, especially if you're reading at an event, people do not want to have to wait between the last reading you did and their reading for you to just stop, drop everything, and do a complete cleansing ritual. Now, here's one of the things that I point out whenever this is brought up. Shuffling in and of itself is a way to cleanse your deck. And generally speaking, even if you're at an event, you are shuffling the decks between clients. As you sit down to do the reading with the next client, you're shuffling, right? And so as long as you have that intention, you are cleansing your deck, so to speak, in between every reading. Now, you're not doing a full out cleansing ritual, but honestly, I don't feel in my 20-some, almost 30 years experience reading tarot, I have never found it necessary to do a complete, full-out cleansing ritual after every reading or before starting every reading. The other thing is, too, most of my readings, I don't do them live. I record them and then send them to the client. And the way I charge for my readings is generally kind of by the minute. I have 10-minute readings, 15-minute readings, half an hour readings, hour-long readings. And you pay a price depending on how long your reading is. Clients do not want me taking up their reading time cleansing my deck at the beginning of their reading. They don't give a crap about that. So here's the thing. Even if you think that a reader needs to do a full-on cleanse before every reading, clients don't want to hear you doing that. They don't want to see you doing that. They don't want that eating time out of their reading. And so, even though I don't do readings in person very often, or live, if you will, most of mine, I sit down, I record them. But the thing is, there's only so many hours in the day. I've got to allow for upload time and everything. I don't have time to stop and do a full-out cleansing ritual in between. I cleanse as I shuffle between each reading. As I'm beginning each reading, whenever I'm shuffling, I'm also cleansing my cards. And, I don't know how it is now, but years upon years upon years upon years ago, more years than I would like to recount, I did read on one of the tarot hotlines. And I know just from talking to people who read for other hotlines, and I know that the hotline that I worked for, they all recommended that you don't even shuffle when you get on a call with a client, because in that case, they literally are paying by the minute, and they do not want to pay to hear you cleanse your deck, shuffle your deck, anything. When I worked for the hotline I worked for, their recommendation as far as your procedure goes for doing calls and that, they told you to pre-shuffle your deck and have it ready to go, so that as soon as you pick up that call, you can say hello, introduce yourself to the client, ask what their question is, get a feel for what the information is they want, and then just start drawing cards, because people don't want to pay for you to even shuffle, let alone do a full cleansing ritual in front of them. So, part of this is completely impractical, because I don't know any reader who does a full-out cleansing ritual of their deck in front of their client before they do a reading. Clients don't want their time wasted with that, and it is unnecessary. It really truly is. Yes, should you do a good cleansing of your deck from time to time? Absolutely. the more you use a deck, probably the more often you're going to need to cleanse that deck. Or if you've had a deck sitting on a shelf for ages and you decide that you want to get that deck out and start working with it again, that might be a good time to cleanse it, do the full out cleansing ritual of it then as well. But on the day-to-day, shuffling your deck, or I like to take my middle knuckle of my dominant hand and knock on the back of my deck 3 times. That cleanses it as well. You can do simple short cleanses like that. You do not have to make a production out of cleansing your deck before you do a reading for somebody. Clients honestly don't want that, and it's not necessary. Her imaginary red flag number 2 is the reader's environment. According to her, if a reader has a noisy environment or is playing music like rock and roll or heavy metal or anything like that, if there's a lot going on in the environment, then that completely invalidates a tarot reading and means that they are a fake tarot reader. This is simply not true at all. While most of us do have a preference for a quiet environment, it is not always possible to read in a quiet environment, especially if you are a professional tarot reader, because if you do events of any type, there's going to be music, there's going to be talking, there's going to be people carrying on, there's going to be a lot of movement going on, and you have to be able to tune in to whatever method you use for reading tarot and be able to deliver a reading despite all of that background noise going on. Some readers are better at this than others, but if you are a professional tarot reader and you've been doing this a long time, chances are you have developed the skill to be able to read despite distractions in your environment. And even if you're not a professional reader, if you are like me, if you guys have followed me, you know I have kids. I rarely ever get to read in a completely quiet environment. Between my kids and then my neighbors carrying on and making noise, I have to always be able to read despite what is going on in my environment. Yes, my kids are good kids. They try to be quiet while I'm doing readings. They try to, just occupy themselves. It's summer. They're both home from school. They try to find something quiet to keep busy while I am doing client readings, but that doesn't mean that they always are quiet. I have to be able to read despite the distractions, and I have zero control over my neighbors. Doors slam, people are carrying on in the hallway during the day, all of that. I have to be able to read cards despite what is going on in the environment. So while this person is like, oh, a noisy environment means that they are a fake tarot reader, it actually speaks to their perseverance and dedication as a reader if they are able to read despite loud noises. And I also want to mention that while this is the exception to the rule, I do know tarot readers who get in their zone and honestly deliver the best readings when they are listening to loud music like rock music or heavy metal or screamo even. For them, those types of music, those loud sounds that some of us might find abrasive just going about our day-to-day tasks, for them, it's almost like white noise. It helps them to tune in. I even have a list of EDM that I'll listen to or hard house that I will sometimes listen to. Now, I can't listen to those when I'm doing client readings because I post, even though they're posted as unlisted videos, I post them to my YouTube channel for the clients to then use the link that I give them to go and view their reading. And even though I do it that way, if YouTube were to pick up copyrighted music in the background, it could pose a problem for me. So because I do recorded readings, I don't get to listen to music very much while I'm doing readings. And to be perfectly honest, that is the one part of my job that bums me out, because I love to have some sort of music, be it ambient, like meditative music in the background, be it drumming, or be it EDM or hard house music, or some other form of electronica. I like to have those things playing while I'm reading. I read well with that background sound. Not everyone does, but it is perfectly plausible for a reader to actually be able to read well with noise and things going on in the background, with music that maybe you don't consider soothing. If it soothes them, if it gets them into their zone, then there is nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Honestly, as we go through this woman's imaginary red flags for tarot readers, some of them are just absurd and just outrageous. Like, there's nothing wrong with listening to music of your choice, of your liking, while you're doing a tarot reading. So her third imaginary red flag for supposedly fake tarot, be able to spot supposedly fake tarot readers, is if the reader shuffles too aggressively. Now, I have noticed this trend particularly on TikTok. The readers I follow on YouTube, I don't think any of them do this, but I do see on TikTok readers doing this all the time. Personally, I don't like it. They shuffle the deck very aggressively so that cards fly out, and then they read the cards that fly out. Now, here's the thing. I pay a lot of money for tarot decks, and so I am very particular in how I treat and shuffle my tarot decks. I baby the heck out of them. I am a super gentle shuffler because I want my decks to last as long as possible, and I want to put them through as little wear and tear as I can, because I do a lot of readings and I can't afford to buy copy upon copy upon copy of tarot deck if I were to aggressively shuffle my decks and then ruin a card or cards to the point that I have to rebuy the deck. So for me, it is a matter of personal preference. I like to gentle shuffle because that is just how I am. Honestly, I get a little whenever I see someone shuffle aggressively like this, where they're just really aggressively shuffling so that cards jump out. But it's not because it's an invalid way to shuffle. That's not my issue whatsoever. My issue is, and I do not have OCD, but that's kind of the closest thing I can compare it to, is we all have, I shouldn't say all, a lot of us have maybe an OCD trait or two. And there's certain things that we have to have a certain way or do a certain way, or it really does drive us batty. And for me, the way I shuffle, I have to shuffle that way. And if I see somebody else being rough with cards, like, my heart, my chest just sort of clenches. I'm like, oh, that poor deck. But it's a matter of personal preference. It's not a matter of validity. If that is a reader's chosen way to shuffle their deck, it is perfectly valid. There's not a damn thing wrong with it. Some people read jumpers, some people don't. I've talked before about the fact that even though I gentle shuffle, because I have arthritis and fibro and lupus and a connective tissue disorder, a lot of times I don't read jumpers because more often than not, I feel that it is a flaw in how my hands are working to shuffle the deck than an actual message from spirit. Once in a while, I do, like, I'm shuffling, I feel like I've got a good shuffle going, and a card flies out, and I'm like, you know what, that one feels like a message from spirit, and I'll go ahead and take that card and read it, but I don't always read jumpers. This style that I have been seeing lately, like I said, especially on TikTok, is not my style, but that doesn't make it an invalid style. Just because I don't want to treat my deck that way doesn't mean that someone who does is a fake tarot reader. If that's how they shuffle, if that's how it works for them, then that's how it works for them. There are people who, like, I overhand shuffle. That is me. First of all, my hands won't rifle shuffle. Can't do it. My hands won't do that anymore. So I couldn't if I wanted to. But also, that I feel is even too hard on cards for my personal taste. But that doesn't mean that somebody who rifle shuffles is not a valid tarot reader, that they can't give a valid reading. That's just criticizing how someone shuffles and saying that that invalidates any tarot reading they might give is just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this is part of why a lot of us are saying this person posted, like, she probably does not even believe these things. She's just being a troll. She's just being controversial on purpose. as a way to drive views to her content. So if you are a reader or you are getting a reading, however you choose to shuffle or however your reader chooses to shuffle, as long as that method works for them as an individual reader, it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter if I cringe because you're bending the cards. It doesn't matter. It doesn't invalidate your reading or your skills as a reader. It's a matter of personal preference. I have mine, you have yours, and that is perfectly fine. And we are not here to try to invalidate other tarot readers because they shuffle different than you. And if you take nothing else from anything that I say, when I teach tarot, right, I always tell my students, and I say this in podcast episodes and everything, there isn't one right way. There just simply isn't. There is not one right, true way to read tarot. There is my way, there is your way, and as for the one right and true way, it simply does not exist, right? There isn't one way. There is just the way that is right for you as an individual reader. Or if you don't read but you are getting readings, there's just the way that's right for the person who is reading for you. As long as they have found their method that works for them, that's the right way for them. Her next imaginary red flag is that you have to use all 78 cards in the tarot deck in order for a tarot reading to be valid. And this just hurts my brain on so many levels. And y'all can probably tell that this whole thing just has me heated. It does, really. I need to... Okay, so let's break this down. What she specifically is talking about, at least what I think she's talking about from how she words it in her TikTok, is like the live readers on TikTok who they just shuffle the deck and they draw maybe say 3 cards for somebody. And then without shuffling the deck again, they just draw the next 3 cards for the next person. And then without shuffling the deck, they just draw the next 3 cards out of the deck for the person. So each time there's 3 cards less in the deck than there was before. Now, personally, would I read like that? No. Even if I were doing a live, because I have done them before, I like to shuffle in between every client. And usually between every question, but sometimes I don't. If I know I'm going to ask question A and question B, sometimes I will shuffle once with that intent and then say, I'll have intended the first 3 cards answer question A, the second 3 cards answer question B, and then if I need clarifying cards, I'll shuffle again and draw clarifying cards as needed. So while I personally don't like the idea of shuffling a deck and then drawing the first 3 cards, or however many, for one person, and then just drawing the next cards for the next person, and then I personally don't like that. But here's the deal. If that's your system and that works for you as a reader, and people are happy with the readings they're getting from you, then who the F cares? That's not my preference, and that's okay. If it works for somebody else, then it works for somebody else, and they are free to do whatever works for them. Just because that method wouldn't work for me doesn't make it invalid. So while I believe from context that that's what she specifically was talking about, her blanket statement is, though, that you absolutely have to have all 78 cards in the deck to draw from in order to have a valid reading. Now, if you've followed me for a while, if you've seen examples of different reading methods I've taught, or you've taken a class with me, or you've seen some of the pick-a-cards that I do over on my other channel, you will know that there are times when I do not use all 78 cards in a deck. One of the ways that I use a deck is for my yes-no questions. And I do have a tutorial here on YouTube as to how I do yes-no questions with the tarot cards. But for that method, you use the minors only. It doesn't invalidate the reading. You don't have to use... First of all, keep in mind that historically, tarot didn't start out as a 78 card deck. It evolved into that. But just because I take the majors out and use the minors only for that reading does not invalidate those readings. There are other readings I do, and again, I have a tutorial here on the YouTube channel of how to do a grand tableau with the tarot. And to do that, you use the majors only from the tarot deck. That's all you use. You take the majors out of your deck, you shuffle those, you lay them out in the grand tableau format, and certain cards mean certain things, and you interpret them in context of how they land in the grand tableau. Because I'm using the majors only does not invalidate that reading. When I do past life readings, I have a majors only deck that indicates the cause of passing in the past life. Just because I'm using a majors only deck does not invalidate that reading. When I do other types of readings, if I'm trying to identify a specific person, I very often will pull all of the court cards from a deck and then just draw from the court cards. The fact that I'm only drawing from the court cards to identify a person does not invalidate the reading. One of the methods I do for using tarot cards for mediumship requires you to break your 78 card deck into the court cards, then the majors, and then the rest of the minors. Just because I have divided the deck up like that and each pile is pulling from a different part of the deck does not invalidate the reading. And majors only, a lot of people will ask how the heck you're supposed to use a majors only deck. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about it. And there are a lot of majors only decks out there that you can buy. I have a Golden Visconti tarot deck that's majors only. I have the Critical Role tarot deck that is majors only. As I mentioned, the Cause of Passing deck that I use, that I personally created, is a majors only deck. You don't have to use all 78 cards if that doesn't suit your purpose. Another thing to keep in mind too is that the majors are like the big, huge life events, right? So if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, the minutia of what is going on say this very day, I know readers who will only draw from the minor arcana because the majors are the big life events and the minor arcana are the minutia of our lives. And so sometimes they will draw just from that because that's what they're looking for, is information on the minutia. Another thing that I and a lot of other readers do is that I will ask different questions of the cards as I go through readings. And so it's very common for me to start a reading with one question, draw 5 cards. Then I may, from that, have another question to go deeper into the topic. And I'll shuffle again and draw maybe 4 cards or 3 cards or maybe another 5 cards. It just depends on the vibe I'm getting from Spirit, right? That doesn't make the subsequent questions I ask and answer invalid, because I'm not putting all the cards back into the deck each time as I go through the reading. Now, I will only do that a couple of times, and then a lot of times what I'll do, if I don't want to scoop cards back into the tarot deck because I want to look for patterns or themes, I will do that a couple of times, and then I will grab a second tarot deck and draw from that tarot deck if I don't want to collect the cards that I already have on the table. If I want to leave them out because I want to keep looking at that and going back to those, then I'll grab a second deck. But again, the fact that I ask one question for a reading for a client, and then, oh, we got this information in those first 5 cards, let's draw some more cards, it doesn't invalidate the rest of the reading because I'm not drawing from 78 cards each time. Her next imaginary red flag is that any tarot reader who doesn't use a spread is a fake tarot reader. This is so absurd that I can't believe we even have to talk about this, but let's talk about it. When I was learning tarot, I absolutely had to have a spread. I needed to have a very prescribed and set way to lay out the cards, and I needed to have those positions in the spread so that I knew what context to interpret the cards in. However, at nearly 30 years of reading tarot cards, while there are some spreads that I do use, there are some spreads that I absolutely love. I use them all the time, and I would not give them up or trade them for anything. So sometimes I do use spreads. But very often in client readings, I have more of what I would call a method than a spread. And essentially, the question I'm asking kind of is the spread, right? So let's say, one of my best-selling readings is what are their true feelings, right? So we'll start off with 5 tarot cards asking what their true feelings are. And then I do kind of have a set way, almost a spread that I do that. But sometimes, especially if something comes up of particular interest in those 5 cards, right? I'll ask what are their true feelings? Then I might ask, what are their intentions towards the querent? Then I might ask for the best advice for the querent going forward. So I don't have a spread. I'm just asking questions, drawing cards, asking a question out of that, drawing cards, asking a question out of that, and drawing more cards. And those cards that I lay out, I don't have a specific spread for how I do it because the question is, in essence, the spread. I don't need further definition by an outlined, rigid spread in those cases. And again, there's nothing wrong with spreads. And just because a tarot reader uses spreads doesn't mean that I think less of them. I love spreads. Like I said, I have some spreads that I use them all the time. I absolutely love them. You couldn't get me to give them up. But also, there are times and situations where I do not want to read with a spread. I have my own method, if you will, in those cases. And the questions I'm asking essentially make up the spread, if you will, as I go, but I'm not using a predetermined spread. And, it really is, again, a matter of personal preference. And I would never judge a tarot reader just because they do use a spread or just because they don't use a spread. As long as whatever they're doing works for them, guess what? It's valid, it's good, it's legit. Her last imaginary red flag is that every tarot reader has to be a teacher. And while she doesn't expressly state this, she kind of makes it sound like every tarot reader must teach tarot for free. That's kind of what she's implying, because she talks about when you're getting a reading, the tarot reader should take the time to teach you what every single card is and like how the spread works and connects and blah, blah, blah. Most of my clients who are getting readings from me do not want to read for themselves. So they would find it a huge waste of time in their reading for me to take the time to dissect everything on an educational level for them. They just want me to interpret the cards. They just want me to tell them what the cards say. They do not care about the nitty-gritty of how you interpret the cards, what the cards mean, why the cards mean this in this particular card. They don't want that in their reading. But by the same token, if somebody wants to learn tarot and they are getting a reading, it's kind of like learning a language. They're being immersed in the subject and they're going to pick up things as they are getting readings. You're not expressly setting out to teach them, but just by getting the reading, there is the opportunity for them to learn things. That's part of why I watch pick-a-card readings on YouTube. It's not so much that I want the reading for myself. In fact, a lot of times I will watch pick-a-card readings that have absolutely nothing to do with me or my current situation or where I am in life. But I watch them because I like to watch how other readers read, how they read for certain topics. I pay attention to how different readers interpret different cards when they pull a card and they're like, well, this card means this. I learn from that. I expand my knowledge as a tarot reader. Whether I choose to adopt the same meanings they do or not, I feel like watching other readers read by watching them do pick-a-cards, even when the pick-a-card is not applicable to me, is a chance for me to engage in immersion and learn new things as a tarot reader. But those people aren't doing those readings with the intention of teaching, nor do they go in and break things down as this woman was talking about. It's just that as I watch the reading, I pick things up naturally. But let's talk about this a little bit more. Not everyone is meant or built to be a teacher. That's just the facts of life. Not everyone can be a teacher. We're not made that way. And just having the expectation that a tarot reader must also be a teacher is ludicrous. It's ludicrous, honestly. Think about whatever profession you have worked in your life. And think about all of the coworkers you've had. Were all of them equally as skilled or meant for training new employees? No, they were not. In fact, I'm pretty sure that all of us can think back on our work history and go, oh my gosh, I could not fathom so-and-so being the one to train new people. Or you've had the experience where your boss decided it was a good idea for so-and-so to train the new hires, and it was a complete disaster. Because not everyone is made to be a teacher. And just because someone reads tarot does not mean they have to teach tarot. Also, again, she kind of implied that this should be done for free. She didn't expressly state that, but I took that as part of the subtext to her statement. Our skills as tarot readers are something that we have worked hard to learn. Chances are we have spent money either through books or classes or tarot decks, etc. And we've put a lot of time and effort into learning. So, it's the age-old thing. Yes, if you are a professional tarot reader, then you should be compensated for your time and skill because it is worth money, just like every other skill that everyone else has that they charge for. Just because it's spiritual doesn't mean you cannot charge. Now, you need to charge reasonably within your ethics and, spirituality and all of that. But there's nothing wrong with charging, and no, none of us should have to teach tarot to anyone for free in order to be considered a legitimate or real tarot reader. I had to pay and work for the knowledge that I have, and every student needs to do that to some extent or another. Some of us pay more than others. Some of us use free resources more than others because that's just where we start out and what we have to do. But we all have to put in that time and effort and energy, and often in our society, giving energy to something means making a monetary exchange because that is how we place value on things. So, if you're a tarot reader, you do not have to be a teacher of tarot in order to be legitimate, nor do you have to teach for free in order to be a real or legitimate tarot reader. So those are her supposed red flags. All of them are bullcrap, as we have discussed. Again, just a troll trying to create controversy, trying to create waves, and spreading misinformation. And, this is gatekeeping in the tarot community is nothing new. I just want to say, anyone can learn to read tarot, Lenormand, Kipper, oracle cards, whatever type of cartomancy system you want. None of those are closed off to anyone. Anyone can learn to read those systems. Yes, some people are going to read them better than others. Some people are going to be more skilled than others. But anyone can learn. And, matters of personal preference for you or someone else does not negate the legitimacy of another reader who has different personal preferences. This has gone way longer than I intended. I thought this would be a very quick, short video, but heated. So I had to get it out. I had to talk about it. But real quick, before we wrap up and go, let's talk about spotting some actual fake tarot readers. And really, when I think of fake tarot readers anymore, what we're talking about here are the scammers. And unfortunately, especially through Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, I had for quite a few years thought that we really had diminished the amount of fake readers, the amount of scammers in the tarot community. But through these platforms, I have discovered that they very much are alive and well, especially on Etsy too. I've talked about this before. But here are some things that you actually do want to watch out for, because these are not a matter of personal preference. These are scams that are frequently run. So scam number one is someone messaging you unsolicited, telling you that they felt drawn to your spirit or what have you, or spirit guided them to you, and that you really need to book a reading with them. Very oftentimes, but not always, these scammers will clone a real tarot reader's account and approach you as if they were that legitimate tarot reader who has a YouTube channel or an Instagram or a TikTok. And that is why you find these disclaimers in a lot of YouTube videos, TikToks, on Instagram, etc., letting you know that we as legitimate and real tarot readers, we're never going to do that shit. We're never going to message you being like, oh, I sensed your aura and you need to buy a reading. No. Us legitimate readers, you need to come to us. We will tell you, give you a link in our bios on Instagram, YouTube, etc. You can find a link there where you can book readings with us, whether it's a website, Etsy, what have you. You have to click on that link and purchase or book a reading with us, or contact us about getting a reading with us. We do not, they used to call it cold calling. I don't know if that's still a term anymore. Yes, I know I'm old. But we do not cold call trying to get readings from people. You have to ask us for a reading. If somebody is reaching out to you, telling you that they were drawn to you and that you need to get a reading with them, that is a scammer. And if it looks like a reader chances are it actually isn't. Make sure that you report them, not the actual reader, but the account that reached out to you. Make sure that you report them, make sure that you block them. And if you do know, if they have cloned a legitimate reader's account, make sure that you let the legitimate reader know that someone is cloning their stuff so that they can try to watch their social media as well. Because I know that it happens that people will clone a tarot tuber's account, and then they will go into the comments on a legitimate reader's YouTube and direct you to oh, you should book a reading with me. Legitimate readers don't do that. So if someone is trying to solicit a reading from you, they have messaged you, you didn't reach out to them, they're reaching out to you, it's a scammer. Report, block. Don't interact with them. Don't give them money. Don't order a reading from them. You have to reach out to a legitimate reader to get a reading. I really thought this scam had gone by the wayside until, and I've talked about this already, so I'm not going to go real in depth to it, but until I was on Etsy as a tarot reader and started looking into that one huge tarot reader on Etsy to find out that she is a con artist, she is a scammer, and you have to go to her actual website off of Etsy to find this information. But she does the age-old scam, which I really did not think this was still around in 2023. And by now, honestly, everyone should know not to go along with this scam. But what she does is you get a reading from her. She tells you something extremely dire, and she tells you that you're cursed and that you have to pay X amount of money to have the curse removed or the luck lifted. And again, you probably weren't even asking about anything that was going to lead to that line of thinking. You didn't think, you just wanted to know if somebody, likes you back. You want to know if your person of interest has a crush on you too. And she's the type of reader who will tell you, oh, well, they would, but you're cursed, so you can never, find love and happiness, or you can never be with this person unless you pay me X amount of dollars, right? And then that, of course, doesn't work. So then they come back with, well, you need to pay me even more. Listen, if somebody is asking you to pay them $500 to light a candle for them, do not walk, run in the opposite direction of that person, because it is a scam. They are not legitimate. The other thing that you need to watch for, and I see this on Etsy, same reader that I'm talking about doing the curse scams, they use a bot or AI to generate their readings. So they're not doing the readings at all. They are using a bot, AI, an app to generate the readings, and then they're just copying and pasting that to you as you're reading. And again, I've talked about this before. Some of them are so bad that they aren't even in coherent English. If the reader is not actually doing the reading, if they are having some form of automation do the reading for them, then as far as I'm concerned, that is a fake tarot reader, because they aren't doing the reading. The bot, the AI, the app is actually doing the reading. They are not. And so therefore that makes them a fake tarot reader. So that can be a little harder to spot if someone's using really good AI or a really good bot or app. It could be a little harder to spot, but sometimes there's telltale signs, because the wording will just be so nonsensical that it becomes obvious. And it can be hard to spot those readers up front. So if you get a reading like that you highly suspect, or without a doubt is a bot, make sure, in my personal opinion, that you leave a review, but put evidence as to why you feel that way in your review, so that you're not just seen as somebody who just didn't like their reading and is just complaining to complain. So make sure you support whatever it is you're saying. And if they're on a platform like Etsy or that, I recommend reporting them. Most times with Etsy, it doesn't do much, if any, good, but I still recommend it, because the hope is if somebody gets caught doing this enough, that eventually action will be taken against them, because you're not getting what you're paying for, and they aren't actually doing the reading. And there are those of us, myself included, that do not feel that readings from apps or bots are accurate or valid. I mean, they might hit on something once in a while, but I have never found any app that I've tried like that just auto generates the readings for you. I've never found those to be accurate or helpful. I know that there are people who do use them, and if they work for you, great. But when someone is paying for a reading, the reader should be doing the reading. Or they should make it crystal clear that they are just entering your question into an app or some sort of software and allowing it to generate the reading. That should be fully disclosed if they are doing that. And then if you choose at that time, like, hey, I'd rather pay $2 to have this person enter my question into the app rather than me paying $9 for the app to be able to ask unlimited questions. If that's your choice, then that's your choice, as long as it's made crystal clear up front. But I don't know any of these who are using apps, etc., that are making it clear up front. They're making it look like they're doing the readings when they actually aren't. And sometimes you can tell too, because if they're using an app, if you happen to have that app, or you know someone who has that app, they tend to not edit it at all. They just copy and paste. So if you say have the Everyday Witch Tarot, and you know what the book meanings say for that, and then you get a reading from someone and it says verbatim what is in the book, either they've used the app and they've copied and pasted it, or that leads into my next topic. These aren't really fake tarot readers, but one of the things to be careful of is readers who are charging for readings but aren't really ready to charge yet. And I know that some people debate this, but in my opinion, and maybe I'm just old school, If you are still having to consult the book for the meanings of the cards, then you're not ready to charge for readings. Now, there's a big difference between, I have been reading for a long time. Still, sometimes if I'm reading with a certain deck and I get a card and I'm like, you know what? I just want to revisit the book on that card, right? Like, I know what the card means, but I'm like, I feel like there's some expansion that needs to happen here. Or I feel like in this deck, I need to like delve into what the creator's intentions were in this specific deck. And so there are sometimes where I'll be reading with a deck and I'm like, you know what? I feel like I want to go check out the book, not because I don't know what that card means in general, but just because I feel like I'm ready for some sort of nuance that I didn't have before. That's a different story entirely. What I'm talking about is somebody who, and I've talked about this before, when I bought my first book for how to optimize my Etsy shop, in that the author admits she did not know how to read at all. All readings from her where she drew an oracle card and then she looked at the book, and she at least had the good grace to reword what the book said so that she was putting it in her own words. And over time, she did learn the meanings to that oracle deck. But I have an issue with a client paying someone to basically do what the client could do themselves, because anybody can buy that deck, draw the cards, and read the booklet. And it's not that someone who is doing that can't give good readings, but they are not of the skill level yet where they should be billing themselves as a professional reader and charging. And I know for myself, right, like I've been reading for a long time. I waited years upon years. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to even think now. I probably waited a good 15 years or more from the time I started doing tarot reading until I started charging and calling myself a professional tarot reader. And I know that sometimes like I'll pick up a new reading style or a new deck or something, and I've used it, I've practiced with it, I understand it, but I haven't done that method or used that deck as much as others. So sometimes I will go ahead and start charging for that, but I charge a little bit less than I normally would because I feel like I'm to a point where I'm not a beginner, but it's more like I'm ready for on-the-job training, right? Like if you think about college, right? You complete your curriculum and then you have your internship and then you get the full-blown job. So when I feel like I'm ready for the internship, then I will start offering that service or reading at a discounted rate because I'm an intern. I know enough to be able to do the job, but I'm not as practiced at it as somebody else who's already gone through the training. And so I don't have a problem with that. It's when you are having to look up everything. It's when the reading really isn't your own. You are just regurgitating what is in the book that I have an issue with. And again, I'm not saying that those people aren't quote unquote real readers. I just consider that they are still in the novice phase and they are still learning, and they are not to the point yet where they should be trying to be a professional reader because they just don't have the skill set yet. It doesn't mean they won't develop it. It just means that they don't have the skill set to be a professional yet. There is more that I could talk about on this particular topic, but I've already made this video way longer than I intended it to be. I thought this was going to be like a 15 to 20 minute video, and yeah, it is way longer than that. I am so sorry, and if you are still listening to this, thank you. I appreciate you for sticking this all out. If you would like to book a reading with me, you can do so through my Etsy shop or through my website. And thank you for sticking out this very long video with me. If you've enjoyed it, please give a thumbs up. Leave your comments down below. What do you think about these? Do you have other types of fake tarot readers or tips for spotting fake tarot readers that I didn't talk about? What have your experiences been? Have you encountered some of these fake tarot readers? What do you think about this woman's imaginary red flags? What do you think about the toxic side of TarotTok? Leave all that down in the comments so that we can discuss it. If you haven't already, please subscribe because that really, really helps out. And until I see you again, blessings to you wherever your journey finds you.